Exclusion, we're the solution.
Spiders used to be my biggest fear, or one of my biggest fears. I despised them. And they're still not on my favorite insect list, but I've come to fear them much less through the years in this line of work. Hi, I'm Matt with Four Seasons Pest Solutions, and today we're going to discuss a little bit about the Loxosceles reclusa. Now, some people absolutely love spiders. In fact, we performed a bat exclusion program for a lady who raised spiders in her home. Now, there were signs on every door and every window in large, bold letters, in fact, that said, "Do not use insecticide, pet spiders inside." She raised tarantulas, and they ran loose inside her home. I didn't go in because, like I said, they're still not on my favorite list. But I'm not alone in this. There's many people that fear spiders, and arachnophobia is real. Even though most spiders are completely harmless to humans, we still fear them. Not only are they completely harmless to humans in most cases, but they're actually quite beneficial and can be known to prey upon many nuisance insects, including vectors such as flies and mosquitoes. As a matter of fact, in East Africa, we have the Ivarca culicivora, also referred to as the vampire spider. These jumping spiders feast primarily on mosquitoes, which have recently fed on human blood. Kind of gross, but it's also kind of interesting. Now, there's studies reportedly underway to learn how to employ and adapt to the use of these spiders against the threatening disease of malaria. So yeah, spiders are scary in some ways, and no, most of us don't want them inside our home, but it's not going to hurt for us to learn a little bit about how they can be beneficial in many different ways. So take, for instance, a situation we were in a few years ago. We were regularly providing pest control at a customer's residence each month, and they complained of heavy webbing and concentrated spider populations on their front stoop. So I asked a series of questions, but the main question was, do you leave your outside light on regularly? And of course they did, because they worked night shift and preferred when they got home in the dark that the light be on to light their way to the front door. So I explained that as long as the light was on, flying insects would be drawn to the front stoop. So while we can get rid of the spiders on the front stoop, the problem is going to end up being much worse if we do that, because the spiders are not only catching but somewhat deterring a great multitude of flying insects. If we remove the spiders, that population of flying insects might grow. Subsequently, when you get home from work, then what's going to happen is many of those flying insects might enter your home when you do. The spiders, however, they won't enter your home. Needless to say, they chose not to take my advice and demanded that we treat for the spiders. It didn't take long before we got the call we knew would come. And it went something like this: "I can't believe how many bugs there are on our front stoop. What are you guys spraying, water? This is the worst pest control I've ever seen." And the rant went on another minute or so before I was finally able to reply. And so I reminded the customer that I had specifically addressed and warned them of what would happen only a few days prior if they insisted that we treat for the spiders. The reply was, "Well, we didn't know it was going to be this bad." Yeah, well, I told you how bad it would be. And besides all that, the flying insects are also dying, right? Okay, so they're just not dying fast enough, and they're making it inside the home. But not only that, they complained because there were so many flying insects now lying dead on the front stoop. I give you this story for one reason. It's to help you understand that many spider species are very beneficial and completely harmless to you and I, and in many cases are actually necessary. Now, we don't want spiders on our front stoop or our front porch if we can live without them, obviously. But in some cases, it just might be that they're beneficial. And this was a case of a beneficial spiders on a front porch. Now, very few spiders actually desire to be indoors long term. The American house spider, cellar spider, and brown recluse are among the few that will take up residence and reproduce and thrive indoors if left untreated. But today's topic is, as I said, Loxosceles reclusa. That's the brown recluse spider, and some may know it as the fiddle or violin spider. Brown recluse are found distributed throughout much of the Midwestern and Southwestern United States. However, in Kentucky, densities range from the east portion at very few to the central portion at minor and mainly introduced to the west portion at heavy and native. So the further west we go in Kentucky, the higher the native density. In central Kentucky, finding them outside is actually quite rare. Over in eastern Kentucky, we may have introduced infestations. Now, we service nearly the entire state of Kentucky and rarely treat for brown recluse east of Interstate 75. But as the map shows, from Interstate 75 west to around Russell Springs, Kentucky, the populations are gradually increasing with very few native infestations in central Kentucky. Once we get west of Russell Springs and closer to I-65, these populations have increased quite a bit, and it's much more common to see the brown recluse in that western portion of the state. Most treatments we perform east of the dividing line to central Kentucky tend to be introduced. In many of those infestations, the spiders are actually highly successful. Now, east of I-75, we've not yet found what we believe is a native infestation. Usually these infestations are light, they're easy to eliminate, and non-recurring. Now, while all this might seem immaterial and unimportant, it's actually imperative to understand when you're performing control measures. Brown recluse control success depends on a knowledge of the pest and its habits, its life cycle, and its food sources. Now, outside their native areas, brown recluse are actually much more rare, and transportation is often the source of infestation in areas of non-nativity. In our experience, they are most commonly transported to non-native areas in boxes, furniture, and other stored items, and typically transported populations are not very successful, although it's not impossible. But despite what many believe, the Loxosceles reclusa is not a deadly spider in most cases, but a bite can certainly be a serious health concern. And also, despite myths, the brown recluse is not out to get you. Bites are in fact rare, and while their bite can be venomous, most bites actually don't pose much threat to humans at all. Becoming familiar with the spider itself might actually help reduce accidental interactions, bites, stop many false sightings and reports, and reduce the number of misdiagnosed bites. Now, there's a plethora of statistics revolving around the brown recluse bite, but by taking several of those statistics and averaging them out, what it seems like is that only about 10 bites out of 100 require medical attention. And of those 10 which do require medical attention, roughly only about one of those become a serious situation. So this means somewhere around 1 in 100 bites are actually serious enough to cause more than just a mild necrosis. But if you're like me, I still don't like the odds and prefer not to become any part of that statistic. If you suspect you're dealing with Loxosceles reclusa, contact the pros here at Four Seasons Pest Solutions. We can do an in-home inspection, evaluation, and determine if you have brown recluse, the density of the populations, potentially where they are originating from, and provide a treatment plan of action. You don't have to live with brown recluse spiders. Like most spiders, the brown recluse is a non-aggressive species towards humans. Here at Four Seasons, we've been witness to many accounts who have lived with native infestations for more than 20 years without ever having a necrotic bite, and most report actually never having been bitten to their knowledge. Some of these situations contain such high densities of Loxosceles reclusa that our staff were actually a bit more than a little timid upon initial inspection. So there's probably not another spider in the U.S. which puts more fear into the minds of people, even pest control professionals, than the brown recluse. Of course, the brown recluse's biggest threat to humans is the skin and tissue necrosis from their bite. Now, they aren't actively seeking out a human to bite, as we said previously, but it does occasionally occur. But mostly it's human error which is to blame. If we inadvertently press upon the spider with bare skin, we run the risk of being bitten. The spider simply goes into defense mode and bites the threat. Yeah, I know it. Who would actually touch a brown recluse on purpose, right? Well, this is where education comes in very handy. While we don't do it on purpose, that's the point. Bites occur when we accidentally interact with the spider and put it in a threatened position where it must defend itself. So for instance, we put on a pair of gloves, a pair of shoes, or an article of clothing where a brown recluse spider has climbed inside. Or a pile of clothes or other items laying on the floor, when we go to pick those up and there happens to be a spider with them, this is when a bite can occur. The same applies to stored items. There are ways to reduce these interactions, especially if you're aware of an infestation. So, a good way to prevent bites when sorting through stored items is to wear gloves. The fangs of a brown recluse are too small to bite through clothing. Now, if you're aware of an infestation, then it only makes common sense to store items in sealed and locked containers to reduce access by brown recluse. Don't leave clothes lying in the floor. Don't leave gloves with open ends. Fold them from the wrist to the inner palm of the glove and roll them for storage. Check shoes, hats, coats, and stored clothes before putting them on. Additionally, if you know you have an infestation and don't have a control plan in place, you're simply putting yourself at a higher risk of sustaining a serious bite. Most bites actually show little to no sign of necrosis. Many heal within 3 weeks, even when necrotic. Of course, if you think you've been bitten by a brown recluse, then you should probably seek medical assistance to avoid the potential issues that might stem from an untreated bite. Children, the elderly, and the infirm should always be seen by a physician if a bite is suspected. Most bites are actually reported as not painful or very little pain, yet some bites might cause immediate reactions such as vomiting, fever, chills, rash, possible dizziness, but the latter and lasting results of the bite are what can be quite painful. If a venomous bite is left unattended, there can be a significant amount of tissue damage occur. Sometimes even medical assistance is no match for a venomous bite and might only reduce the effects rather than completely stop them. According to several medical sources, a necrotic, dry, sunken patch with irregular red edges and a pale center and a possible blister towards the center actually indicate a venomous bite. This lesion can expand as the venom destroys skin and tissue, and it can often reach up to several inches in just a few days to a few weeks. And that lesion may continue for up to several months and cause a deep and lasting scar. And in some cases, that scar may even become aggravated years later. Here at Four Seasons Pest Solutions, it's been our unfortunate experience to find that many spider bites may be misdiagnosed as brown recluse spider bites. On several occasions, we have been called to the scene of a possible brown recluse infestation only to find that there are no brown recluse present. Now, this might at first seem like the physician's fault, but it really isn't. If there's no specimen for the physician to confirm, then really the only option the doctor has is to give their best guess. If the doctor simply says, "Oh, that's not a brown recluse spider bite," but he turns out to be wrong, well, that could spell disaster. So what other option does the doctor have at that point? Now, there can be several tests run, there can be tissue samples, and so on. These can be taken, these can be tested. However, this does not guarantee an accurate diagnosis, especially during the earlier stages of a bite. So it's best for the doctor to assume the worst, in this case, and prescribe treatment as if a venomous bite occurred. Many spider bites from other species can cause medical problems, especially with allergies, skin issues, and other illnesses that humans might have. Furthermore, infections like staph and other threatening problems can stem from the bite of a non-venomous spider. It's best for the doctor to assume the worst in this case and prescribe treatment as if it is a venomous bite. Many spider bites from other species can actually cause medical problems, especially with allergies, skin issues, and other illnesses which humans might have. Furthermore, infections like staph and other threatening problems can stem from the bite of a non-venomous spider. So it may have nothing to do with the spider and more to do with the person. But if the doctor treats the bite as serious, both you and the doctor are safer for it. Yet, that doesn't make our job any easier as pest control professionals. We were called to the scene of an alleged brown recluse bite some years ago. Upon arrival, we performed a very thorough inspection of the property. No sign of brown recluse spiders or any of their evidences were present inside or outside the home. The home was located in a non-native area where no other known infestations were documented. So we began to ask a series of questions to figure out how this customer might have been bitten by a brown recluse, since the doctor had diagnosed just that. So we began with, where were you when you were bitten? And the customer was at home. Okay, so where were you bitten on your body? And they were bitten on the arm. So did you immediately know you had been bitten? And indeed, the customer did. What were you doing when the bite occurred? Oh, you were working in the landscaping outside the home. Okay. Which side of the home were you on when it occurred? Oh, the back side. Okay. Now, does the sun rise by chance on the front side of the house? Oh, it does. So that means it sets on the back side of the house. So this means the back side of the house is the westernmost facing side. So you were gardening and landscaping at the time the bite occurred on the westernmost side of the home. What plant or material were you working with when the bite occurred? Oh, you were working with a holly bush. Okay. Did you begin to get weak? You did. Well, let's take a look around outside. So we went outside, we began to take a look around, and what I discovered were several black widow spiders on the backside of the home. So I responded with, here are the black widow spiders, and I believe you've been bitten by a black widow, and the doctor may be misdiagnosed in this situation. So this kind of sparked a little bit of controversy, and the customer got just a little bit upset and said, oh no, this I know this doctor personally, and they're actually really very dependable." And my response was, yes, I understand that the doctor is very dependable. But did you take the doctor a specimen, a sample of what bit you? No. So the doctor was only able to make the best guess that he or she could with the information that you provided. Now, it wasn't a wrong guess, it was just a best guess with the provided information. So now, if you will take this new information to the doctor, I believe you'll get a new diagnosis. So what we need to do now is treat for black widow spiders so this doesn't happen to you again. But no, they wanted to be treated for brown recluse spiders because that's what the doctor said it was. And after all, we all know that doctors are the real pest control professionals, right? So I said, with all due respect, we cannot treat against a brown recluse if no brown recluse are present. So we can perform a brown recluse treatment, but there are none here to kill. And the black widow is not going to be targeted in that situation. So if you'll let us do an exterior treatment for black widows, we can also do an interior spider treatment as well. And I think this will be your best bet. Without continuing to repeat the dialogue, it was about 2 weeks before we were called back to the home and were able to get in and perform the treatment that we had actually recommended. The customer had indeed at this point conferred with the doctor, relayed the new information, and the diagnosis was changed, and the customer was now happy. The bottom line is this: when you have no specimen, the doctor can only give you their best guess. When a professional assesses a situation and shows you the offending species, there's not really much to argue about. Knowing what to look for in a situation like this is extremely important when we're diagnosing spider issues. Treating for black widow spiders when brown recluse are the problem will not yield results, and likewise, performing an interior brown recluse treatment will not affect an exterior black widow population. So knowing what to treat for and how to find a difficult pest in a situation like this can mean the difference between a customer being bitten or a customer not being bitten. In cases of misdiagnosis, though, in my estimation, assuming a brown recluse spider bite and treating accordingly is probably the safest scenario and is precisely what I would want from my doctor if I thought I had been potentially bitten by a brown recluse. Unfortunately, however, misdiagnosis doesn't only occur when patients report an insect bite. In some documented cases, other medical conditions were assumed to be brown recluse bites, even when no bite was reported. And in these cases, misdiagnosis, I think, could actually be potentially dangerous. Unrelated lesions due to gangrene, staph infection, and other sores are just a few of the misdiagnosed cases that we find documented. In cases where no spider bite is reported, but brown recluse-like lesions are present, I believe doctors and their patients should order a thorough inspection to rule out the possibility of a bite. If the patient lives outside the native area for brown recluse, well, at that point a bite then is highly unlikely. And as I stated previously, being informed about the brown recluse can be helpful in many ways, including medical diagnosis. If you've never seen a brown recluse, you might wonder just what they look like and what size they are. The brown recluse is often reported at an average size of a U.S. quarter when the legs are fully extended. But in my 2.5 decades of pest control service, I've seen adults range in size from a quarter all the way up to a $50. We have trapped thousands of adults well above what's considered the common size. However, the average size is in fact just over the size of a U.S. quarter. But instar sizes vary dramatically throughout the molding process and are less commonly found live or trapped on sticky traps. In only a handful of cases, we've seen nymphal stages of the brown recluse in large numbers, under the size of a standard shirt button. In the pre-adult stages, certain characteristics of the brown recluse are much less noticeable, and in many cases, they might actually be confused with several other spider species. Their colors can actually range from dark brown to a tan color in the adults, and they have a slick appearing uniform abdomen with no striping, banding, or mottling. On the cephalothorax, you'll actually find the most distinguishing feature of the brown recluse. This is the dark marking which resembles a fiddle or violin. The neck of the fiddle or violin is pointed towards the abdomen, and the body of the marking faces towards the head. The spider is actually slick and smooth appearing with little to no hair from a distance. They're slender and sleek with long, thin legs which have no noticeable spines or banding. Now, many spiders have 8 eyes, but the brown recluse only has 6, and these are arranged in a semicircle pattern in pairs of 2. Of course, this is a feature you won't want to get close enough to the spider to see without being in a controlled environment and having a good source of magnification. The brown recluse is a hunting spider belonging to the family Sciaridae, along with other 6-eyed venomous spiders known to cause potentially necrotic bites. Formerly, they belonged to the family Loxoscillidae. Of course, by nature, they're an outdoor pest and are common in their native habitat. You'll find them under logs, rocks, piles of wood, and debris. These are all areas where a brown recluse spider loves to live. Now, they're primarily nocturnal, and they live mostly confined to dark areas. During the day, they're rarely going to be seen, but when seen in the open, and especially during the day, it's likely a male. The reason for this is because the females rarely move far from their harborage area. Inside her harborage area, this is where she'll form irregular webs for her egg sacs. When any brown recluse are seen during the day, it's likely indicative of a dense or overcrowded infestation or hunger and maybe untargeted pesticide applications. Brown recluse thrive where there is a food source and plenty of dark places to hide. So cluttered conditions, unused storage areas, and places where little to no human activity is present, these will generally yield higher population density than other areas. Females can lay approximately 40 to 50 eggs within each egg sac. At around only about a third of an inch in diameter, this silk off-white egg sac is easily hidden between closely fitted items. So she'll produce around 5 egg sacs in her lifespan, and her lifespan may be roughly 2 to 4 years. And within the egg sacs, the eggs hatch and the spiderlings emerge and begin to explore the sac, and soon they'll molt and leave the nest. Over the next year, they'll molt between 5 and 8 times before they finally reach adulthood, and during this time, they'll leave behind their shed skins with the distinctive outstretched appearance as proof of their presence. Inside a home, there are more places for them to hide than we're ever going to be able to cover. From the hot and dry attic to the cold and wet basement, a brown recluse will hide, live, and reproduce successfully. If you see suspended webs, however, it's not a brown recluse. Many spiders deploy webs to both live, trap prey, and move about, but the brown recluse does not. Cellar spiders and the American house spider are often misidentified as brown recluse. These spiders produce hanging webs to capture their prey and look substantially different from a brown recluse, at least to the trained eye. Wolf spiders and louse spiders are spiders which build somewhat similar webbing to the brown recluse, but larger. The wolf spider doesn't typically try to hide its webbing, and neither the wolf spider or the woodlouse spider are dangerous, and really neither look much like a brown recluse. These 4 spiders will often be seen in corners of the ceilings, doors, and floors, and right in the open, unhidden. But the brown recluse's very name is indicative of their featured habit, and that's hiding. They love to stay hidden and unseen, and high numbers are often present with few sightings. So if you see lots of spiders, chances are it's not a brown recluse. However, if you live within their primary area of density, you probably ought to play it safe and call a pro just to be sure. So where do brown recluse hide? Well, cracks, crevices, and voids. From corners, wall to ceiling joints, floor to ceiling joints, behind and under trim work, inside cabinets, inside drawers, between stacked items like cardboard and wood, in stored items, and around and in clothing items. Behind and under furniture and beds also provide an equally safe harborage area. Voids in block walls and other walls, drop ceiling voids within ductworking, and actually any other void can provide great hiding, breeding, and feeding grounds for the brown recluse. Attics, crawl spaces, basements, garages, and outbuildings, these all provide ample harborage as well. What do they like best? Well, clutter. The more places to hide, the more perfect the home it makes. If the spider has more places to hide, so do other bugs, and that's precisely what the brown recluse is looking for as a meal. Brown recluse infestations occur equally as often within separate structures from the house. As we said, detached garages, barns, storage sheds, commercial buildings, and even boats, planes, trains, and cars can all provide sufficient harborage. If two things touch, a brown recluse would like to be between them. As funny as it may sound, it's actually quite true. While it's not necessarily 100% effective, prevention is the best place to start when eliminating the brown recluse. In native zones, the brown recluse will behave like any other pest and migrate inside in search of food or shelter. This can be greatly reduced by means of exclusion processes. So if we start with gaps, cracks, and crevices, we can apply sealants and gaskets and use these to reduce entry points. So around windows, doors, plumbing, and utility penetrations, these are all great spots to find gaps and cracks. Log cabins, especially, and other wood-sided homes are certain to have a plethora of entry cracks, which must be sealed to exclude pests. Seal plates and band boards on homes are easy entry points as well. Sealants where the seal plate meets the foundation wall, this can prevent entry, and likewise, cracks where the concrete floor of a basement meets the concrete foundation wall, these can also be sealed to prevent both pest entry and harborage. But equally important is to reduce harborage areas by sealing gaps and cracks within the structure. Reducing debris on the outside of the home is also effective. Wood piles and building materials are not to be excluded from the list of debris. Eaves, soffit, metal roofing trim, and even the bottom edge of siding are all great areas for harborage and entry. It's important to note that while brown recluse bites are rare, as we said, it only takes one to cause serious problems. So if you know you have an infestation, taking precautions against a bite might save you a finger or a toe. Now there are several precautions which you might take to avoid being bitten by the venomous brown recluse. And the first is always exclusion. Excluding the pest from the home reduces and even stops infestation. However, introduction is unaffected by exterior home exclusion measures. To combat this, indoor harborage sealants can be made to prevent infestation success. This includes sealing any cracks and crevices that might be found inside the home. Now, as it might sound, this can be quite a time-consuming and nearly impossible task. Sealing every crack and crevice, however, that's not the plan. Sealing the ones to likely be used by the brown recluse, that'll work just fine. Additionally, clutter reduction is a priority when combating or preventing the brown recluse bite as well. Reducing unneeded items, stored items, and junk can help reduce populations and help prevent populations and reproduction successes. Keeping shoes, clothes, and gloves off the floor, these are key in preventing bites. And likewise, wearing gloves when sorting through clutter and stored items can also help prevent a bite. Utilizing sealed storage containers for stored items instead of boxes is a great idea when combating the brown recluse. This can allow you to access stored items without really fearing a bite. But just remember, where two things touch, or almost touch, or actually if they just provide a sort of crack or crevice, or a void with dark, shady conditions, there's where you might find a brown recluse spider. Now, while the brown recluse spider might be among the most difficult spiders to control for many people because of their reclusive nature and their preferred harborage areas, treatment by untrained persons or undertrained persons, they're often unsuccessful. So it's recommended that no self-treatment be performed on brown recluse spiders. At least here at Four Seasons, that's what we recommend. Not only are the areas and methods of treatment unfamiliar to the average person, but their health threat alone, that ought to be enough to cause one to reach out to a qualified professional for assistance. If you absolutely must DIY your brown recluse control, sticky traps placed against the wall in sheltered dark areas like under the bed and behind furniture are really the only DIY treatment that we recommend for brown recluse here at Four Seasons. The more you place, the more spiders you're going to catch. So put them everywhere. Put them everywhere you can. But remember that pets, young children, and items which might inadvertently come in contact with these sticky traps, they'll also stick to them. But unfortunately, blueboards will only catch mostly males, and that leaves the females to continue reproduction. Professional use of insecticides, monitoring devices, and exclusion measures are actually your best bet when it comes to brown recluse infestations. Crack and crevice treatments along with void treatments are crucial. Liquid aerosols, dusts, and sometimes even fogs may all be utilized in their proper areas. It's imperative, though, that the product being used is actually labeled for the control of brown recluse spiders. Just because it'll kill other pests does not necessarily mean it'll work on all pests. There's a reason why insecticides contain a label which lists the pests covered by that product. So don't ignore it if you have to DIY. Misuse of insecticides can actually lead to not only failed treatment attempts, but potential health threats as well. And at no time do we recommend DIY using any insecticide methods for brown recluse spider control. However, if DIY is your only option, at least hire a professional pest company like Four Seasons Pest Solutions as a consultant for your treatment. Yes, this option is still going to come with a little bit of cost, but it can yield much better and safer DIY results when controlling the brown recluse spider. And it can actually save a little money in your wallet at the same time. But remember this, not all pest companies offer paid consulting services. So don't be angry if it's hard to find one that does, because people often call wanting to ask all sorts of DIY questions and expect free answers in return. And this takes time away from the business, and some companies don't have readily available staff to perform these duties. So just give Four Seasons a call. For a fee, we will give you advice on what product to use, where to apply that product, how to apply that product, when to apply that product, how often to apply that product, and we can also supply the sticky traps at a cheaper rate than big box stores. Additionally, we offer a wide range of brown recluse treatment plans, from exclusion programs to complete elimination and prevention programs, all the way to long-term reduction plans where elimination is really not that possible or otherwise unlikely in native areas. And we've had great success in total elimination within areas that are outside native habitats and areas of low density. In areas of high density, long-term control methods have yielded the best results, and monitoring devices will often yield only 1 to maybe 10 trap spiders over the course of a year throughout the entire structure. Whatever takes place in a brown recluse infestation, understanding the pest is the first priority in successful management programs. Additionally, it's important for those who may be forced to live with them due to financial hardships or simply because you don't feel the spider is a threat. While brown recluse spiders rarely bite and they are non-aggressive, bites do occur and can sometimes mean the loss of a finger, toe, or maybe serious lifelong scarring. DIY treatments are rarely effective, and hiring a reputable pest control company will likely yield the best results in controlling populations. But if you feel you must live with an infestation, less clutter means less places to hide, and that means less potential for a bite. But if you want to keep you and your family safe, healthy, and pest-free, just choose Four Seasons Pest Solutions for all your pest control needs. We can come in and we can take care of even your brown recluse spider problem. And remember, it's okay to live among pests, but you don't have to live with them.
It's good to have Four Seasons on your side.